everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of The Row Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest is a good personal friend of mine. It's John Scott. John is a pastor where I live, and he also happens to be my pastor. But one of the reasons why he's here on the 5 weeks of Halloween is because he's one of the few people I know that tells... I guess I shouldn't say tells the truth about religion, because I don't really necessarily think that's accurate. I think he's one of the few people that's willing to talk about some of the things that the Christian religion has caused when it comes to humanity and the issues that we have faced when it comes to man and his God, or at least in the Christian aspect anyway. And one of the reasons why, again, I wanted to talk to him is he actually does his research on a lot of stuff that he talks about. Well, primarily all of it. Obviously, he's got his opinions or whatever, but I thought, who else would be better to talk about the situation when it comes to, quote unquote, spooky season and religion than John Scott. And before you snub your nose, because I know there's plenty of people out there, pastor and religion. Listen, this is not going to be like anything you expected. I promise you that. Whatever you're expecting this episode to be, it is not going to be it. And you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as it registers in your head. But again, one of the reasons why I wanted him here is because he's one of the people that actually will tell the truth and be honest about some of the things that have happened before. And we get into things like, religious cults in American history. And I don't want to give away too much, so I'm not going to here. You'll see it here in a little bit. But it was a really good conversation, and I actually learned quite a bit of stuff that I didn't think I was going to learn when it comes to some of the things that we talk about. So it's interesting to see how man and religion has always kind of found a way to justify terrible things. And again, we talk about it here on this episode. So I do want to shout him out and say thank you for being willing to come on here and being as open as he was, because it's hard for people in his position to branch out into areas like this one and not be afraid of backlash, especially after some of the stuff that we talk about, because there are going to be some religious people that watch this that are not going to like some of the subjects that we touch on. But hey, it's history. It happened. So I'm not shying away from it. And it's all about being honest and being open. And from my perspective anyway, that's what I do, or at least try to do here on this show, is be as honest and as open as humanly possible. And this week is no different. So if it offends you, some of the stuff that we talk about, I wish I could say I cared, but I don't. And I mean that with all due respect. It's the stuff that we talked about happened, and there's no way around it. So anyway, enough of my babbling about that. I do want to say two things before we get into the sponsors in today's episode. Wherever you're watching this or listening to this on, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and like this episode. Show your boy some love. Help me out here, because without you guys doing that, I don't progress. And a lot of you guys do. So I want to say thank you to those who do. You guys are awesome. The support you show in this show in the first year has been incredible. And please keep doing that. But if you haven't, or this is your first time watching or listening to this episode, or a episode rather, please do me a favor, hit subscribe. I got a lot of good content for you too. A little bit of everything for somebody. Kind of like this whole 5 weeks of Halloween series that I've done here. There's a little bit of everything for everybody. This whole show's like that. I don't have one category I stick to, because I'm not into, you take a look behind me. I'm into a little bit of everything. So this show is no different. So please do that. And also, at the beginning of next year, I'm going to be going heavily promotion-wise on my Patreon page, which is absolutely free to join. You can do so at www.patreon.com/therowshowpod. Join for free. It's absolutely free. You get bonus episodes. There's some already posted. There's a hilarious outtakes of the moment I almost ruined my interview with Ken Shamrock. An embarrassing moment, but hey, it happened, and I thought it was funny to talk about. You can get that there. Giveaways. We're going to be doing a lot of that. And again, I'm going to be doing a lot of heavy promotion on the Patreon page at the start of 2025, because again, it's going to be a lot easier than fighting the Facebook and social media algorithms in general, trying to get the product out there to you guys, because it is a pain trying to fight all that. So go to www.patreon.com/therowshowpod one more time and join for free, because why wouldn't you? I'm awesome. Obviously, that's why you're watching, right? Yeah, I have no ego at all. Anyway, Just either here or there. Let's go ahead and get into a word from my sponsors and then my interview with my brother, John Scott. Here we go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and I'm here to tell you about my sponsor, W Energy. Now, what is W Energy? Well, I'm going to tell you because I myself use W Energy. Here I've got this Calio cream. It's got a great flavor to it, and not only that, it is clean energy. Energy that's not going to make you crash, not give you the jitters. I've been looking for a reason to drop all my old energy drinks that were unhealthy for me. Too much additives, too much trash in it, too much stuff that's going to make you crash, make you fall asleep at the end of the day. Not W. So how can you get your hands on some W to try? I'm going to tell you how. And I'm going to tell you how to save some money while you do it. Go to www.w.gg and at checkout, type in my new promo code, and it is Who Else? That's right. The promo code at www.w.gg is Who Else? Because, hey, who else but me, your boy Jay? I wouldn't steer you wrong, right? And when you do, make sure you tag your boy. Let me know you got some, you tried it, and I know you're going to love it. All right, everybody, it's time to stop and let you know about today's sponsor of the show, Crazy Martin's in Piqua, Ohio, one of my favorite places in the entire world to go to. Crazy Martin's has provided their customers with quality products for over 20 years, from ashtrays to water pipes and everything in between. Stop in, check out their selection, and of course, check out their pinball machines. With over 20 pins to choose from, there is something for everyone. Crazy since 1996. I don't just say this about every place. I love going to Crazy Martin's. I've always loved going to Crazy Martin's ever since I was of age to go to Crazy Martin's. It's one of my favorite places in the entire world. Me and my wife go there almost every Sunday to play pinball machines. It is one of the funnest spots in Ohio you could possibly find. It is in Piqua, Ohio. Check out their website at www.crazymartins.com. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest is somebody that I have known for quite a few years now. We became pretty close. He is my pastor, of course, as you would know from the intro of this show. However, the reason why he's on here today is because it is obviously spooky season. We're in the middle of it. And one of the topics that I wanted to talk about was kind of the relationship of religion's part and the so-called occult, I guess, if you will, and some of the things that have happened before in the past. And my first thought when I thought about doing this was I should get this individual on because they know their history, they do their research, and they're one of the few people in quote-unquote religion that is actually honest about some of the things that have happened before in the past. So I thought, hey, who better than my guest right now? Enough of my babbling, though, about this guy. It is John Scott, my brother. How are we doing today?
What's up? I am excited, man. I'm happy to be here with you and chop it up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I said in the intro, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because, and we've obviously discussed this before coming on here, is because before in the past, there's always been situations where people have done some atrocious things in the name of religion. You go, I mean, and it's not just Christianity. You go all the way back to the Crusades, all that stuff. It's all religions, but at the same time, here in America, we've got some pretty questionable stuff that's happened. And again, with it being spooky season, I'm always interested in revisiting these things because entertainment, usually there's some kind of form, whether it be on the Discovery Channel, whatever it might be, where they cover this around this time of year. So I thought, hey, why not do that now? So basically, for those watching right now, the rundown of today's show is going to be is we're just going to have a conversation. It's not going to be your typical interview that I have on here. We're just going to have talks about some of the things that have happened before in American history in the name of religion. So after saying all that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and you give us kind of the intro of how you think we're going to start today with some of the topics we're going to talk about.
Well, the church throughout history is tied to the occult, tied to the witch trials, we're Christmas stuff we do, a lot of pagan stuff and Christmas stuff we do, and so we have this tendency to be hypocritical. So around this time of year, you have some Christians that lose their mind and act as if this is the most demonic time of the year and we need to pray and fast because all the demonic stuff that's taking place, as if demonic stuff doesn't happen around the globe all the time. But we Christians tend to like these special events. And so Halloween is just one of them, and Halloween, the occult, and these witch trials are kind of mixed together because the occult, the word sounds ominous, but it's really just a Latin word, occultus, which simply means hidden or secret. And
Hmm.
initially, it was about science, and throughout history had this tendency, when it comes to science and technological breakthroughs and things like that, that the church still to this day starts losing it. And so it's interesting that back in the day when we talking about alchemy and you're talking about astrology, um, that the church would get all wound up with this whole idea that there's something demonic going on. Like now everything will be about, oh, this is the end of time, the antichrist is coming and they're going to put a chip in your thumb and you won't be able to eat. We always swing to these extremes, and so it's not surprising to me that initially all the stuff that we call dark and demonic were actually mixed up in church history altogether, because the church, um, initially in the first century, was known for its love, martyrdom, helping the poor. It was all, and they were called the Way before we were called Christians. It was the Way, following the way of Jesus, and it was about the fourth century or so. Constantine accepts Christ, and then eventually the Roman Empire makes Christianity the state religion, and that's when the church got entangled with politics. We start seeing less of the miracles and the healings. We weren't being known by love anymore. We operated like everybody operates. That's how you get the crusades, because that's what we do. We put a cross on a shield and we run out and we fight war, when the cross was never about war. And so once these things got tangled up, the church got increasingly corrupt. And so it was always competing with some of the pagan practices, because Christians were running off to celebrate these pagan rituals and stuff, so-called pagan rituals, and the church would come up with something to combat that. And so when you
Hmm.
talk about the occult, then it becomes this power play on the part of the religious elite, um, to label things and to scare people with fear tactics. And so most people don't even understand what goes on in the occult, because that's a catch-all phrase. It
Right.
incorporates witchcraft, which is its own thing, because you have white magic, dark magic. It incorporates astrology. It incorporates all kinds of different things are considered part of the occult. And I think that, because I don't like demonizing people, and so I think people are drawn to the supernatural, and the church has lost this supernatural vibe. Like we have gifts of the spirit, we can have the miracles, the healings. We're not seeing those things like we used to. And so when somebody seeks supernatural things outside of what we see and feel and smell and touch, then they'll be drawn to other avenues, because for example, this that met a woman in Aruba, and my wife and I were swimming in the Caribbean Sea there, and she was there with her husband and another couple. This woman, and they were buzzed. They had they had a good buzz on, and so they get in the water, and they're kind of talking back and forth with me, and then she says, "Guess what? I'm a witch." Like, like she thought this would shock me, but you know how I am. So I
Right,
said,
yeah.
I
See,
was like,
that was the wrong person to try
right.
to shock.
I
That's
was like, "Wow, that's interesting." And she asked what I do, and I said, "Well, I'm into human development type stuff." And she said, "Oh, that's good." So she broke down a little bit about witchcraft and what she believed, and she said I was part of a church before, and it just seemed too narrow. There were all these other things I wanted to know, and they didn't have an answer for. And I
Mm,
think that's 'cause they were prime example. And we talked and we laughed, and I cracked jokes on them being drunk. I said shit a few times. I did all this kind of stuff, and then I told them, I said that I'm actually a pastor, and they said, "Get out of here." I said, "Yeah, yeah." And they said that you know what, if I did go the Christian route, I'd go to your church. And it was simply because we had this tendency to take what a person believes. She's telling me this blessed her, helped her, and all this stuff, and then I'm gonna hit her with some debate about Christianity, which I'm not gonna do. So that's how I feel when it comes to the occult, that we probably demonize some things that we shouldn't have
yeah,
demonized, and just ask someone and talk with someone and share what you believe, they share what they believe, and you're cordial. And because
yeah.
that's how I am.
I totally understand what you're saying though, because I know um when I first started dating my wife, and I won't give out any specifics, but I had certain people who I know who are close to me, um, and are religious go, she has a Harry Potter tattoo. Are you sure about this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're
Yeah,
obviously alluding to the witchcraft. And that shit's
yeah,
always been very amusing to me when it comes to the argument over Harry Potter. And I know that there's some Christians that go,
yeah,
because of the
yeah.
witchcraft and wizardry and blah, 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 blah. But they have no problem with Santa magically coming down your chimney.
Hello.
It, it's a, you know what I'm saying? It's a cherry picking thing. And,
Yeah,
and I think that goes back to all the way what we said in the intro, all the way back to the Salem Witch Trials. There's
yeah,
been this weird, like, witch has always been
yeah,
a buzzword all the way back to our earliest history as a country.
yeah,
And I mean, it was so prevalent, obviously, in the area of Salem, which everyone knows Salem Witch Trials. That's obviously where it was.
yeah.
But to this day, all this time later, Salem is still a destination spot for around Halloween because of those events. So
Right.
that's something I kind of want to talk about. A, not only because it's on topic, but B, I don't know the history of some of that stuff. And I thought,
Yeah,
who else better to figure that out than somebody who is on the quote unquote inside and have a discussion about that. So,
yeah.
what did you find in your research of over time, whether not only for this interview, but also just as your time as being a historian, that the historian that you are? What have you found out about the Salem witch trials?
I found out that in the from the 15th century all the way to the 18th century in Europe, it was prevalent that
Mm,
women, and it would be specific women, usually it would be a widow, or it would be a single woman. And so the church has always tried to use God to continue to perpetrate isms like sexism, for example. And so it's no accident that the people who would be accused most often would be these single women. And it could be for any reason that somebody could come and say, she put a spell on me. And then it would begin where they would grab a hold of her, and then they start this so-called trial that they would have. Jay, man, I'm telling you, some of this stuff that they did in these trials, um, it shouldn't be funny, but it is. Because they would accuse these women of witchcraft because they considered them rebellious, didn't consider them in line with the church, and so they would demonize these women, and it just got to this hysteria um, about witchcraft, and people began hunting for witches over anything. And some of this stuff that I looked up, man, is what they would do to interrogate these so-called witches. One was witch swimming, real technical stuff, where they would throw the woman in the water. If she sunk, then she was innocent. If she floated, then she was a witch. Had something to do with some belief system that witches, something about their body and it wouldn't sink. So they put a rope on the woman, throw her in the water, and sometimes they couldn't get the so-called innocent woman out in time and ended up killing the innocent woman in a witch trial. So that the only difference between life and death was going to be whether or not you floated or not. And
Was
that's
there
that,
any
huh?
was there any kind of scriptural reason behind that measurement? Because that sounds super random.
Yeah, it is. It's just
Okay.
word of mouth, and you know how different
Yeah.
legends begin, and stories that people tell. But it's no, there's no scriptural basis for this
Okay.
exam, and that's what gets me about church history and the occult and witchcraft and things like that. Is that our response to these things were actually the evil thing. So if
Right.
this
Right.
woman, if you had some man or woman that was practicing witchcraft and they healed some kid or something like that, now you dragging them in to be tortured, dragging them in to be hung or burnt at the stake, and just like that, we still do that. When you talked about your wife and her tattoo, and then
Right.
we boom, that's the most terrible thing that could happen. Now I know you and your wife, and you two are good people, and that was a ridiculous claim for them to know. You sure you want she watched Harry Potter? Well, you watched Bewitched back in the day. You watched Bewitched back in the day, and
Cherry
boy,
picking.
there you go. And Bewitched, man, she would, it was straight up witchcraft, and we would just watch it like it was
Mhm.
nothing. It wasn't till Harry Potter that everybody started losing it. You're teaching kids witchcraft, and then I would notice in these Christmas uh, shows and stuff in Christmas time, all this mystical stuff that Santa would do. I mean, the reindeers fly for crying out loud because of some magic beans. So there's that right off the bat. He's got these little workers running around, and he's able to fly around the globe with some flying reindeer and all these just all these mystical different things, but we cherry pick. We still doing that. We take this thing and we harp on it. This thing is fine. And so we miss the fact that what you're doing to these women is the evil thing. And
Yeah.
so they had another test where you had to quote some scripture. They give you, well, you have to recite it. They give you a scripture, and now you recite it. If there was any mistake made when they were reciting this, it was called the prayer test, then they were a witch. You can't
So
make,
memory lapse was considered being a
yeah.
witch. I couldn't even recite a verse if I wanted to right now. That's oh wow.
I'm a preacher, and usually I'm googling where I know it says that somewhere, and, and googling
Right.
what it says. It's all these translations now, so who knows? But yeah, who's gonna pass that test when they know it's life or death, whether or not you can recite this particular scripture correctly with no errors? And
It's
so
kind of like when police if they pulled you over for a DUI and go
yeah,
recite the alphabet backwards.
right.
I couldn't do that stone
Right.
cold sober right now. It's a
Right,
setup.
exactly. Exactly. It's like it's impossible to pass this test, but they called it a prayer test. They had this is a good one. It's called witch cakes. Witch cakes. So if somebody it was uh promote proposed to be a victim of some witch's spell, and then they would take a little bit of the victim's urine and they would use some ashes and rye meal, mix it all together and bake it into a cake. Now this is the great thing. They give it to a dog, and if she was a witch, the dog is going to talk and out this person as a witch. So that's the one you wanted because the dogs never talked. But this is hanging on whether it's person you're gonna hang a person or whether you're gonna do something even more twisted, burn them alive. And if it's not based on any scriptural anything, I mean, you could grab scripture to say anything you wanted to say. So I guess you could go to some Old Testament stuff about King Saul telling you get rid of all the witches and the divination, and you could try that, I guess. But we follow Jesus, and following him, he's not burning people at the stake over whether they're doing witchcraft or any other occult thing. We like
So
the yeah.
just to clarify real fast,
Mhm.
because I was so shocked by what you said, like I don't think I processed it right. So I just want to
Right.
revisit it one more time. If the dog ate it and didn't talk,
Yeah.
you were a witch.
Or no, you were actually innocent. That's the one you
Okay.
wanted
Okay,
because
so if the
the
dog didn't talk, you were innocent. Okay, I
yeah.
got you. I see what you're
There you
saying
go.
now. Okay, all
If
right.
the
Okay,
dog
okay.
talks and outs you, then you're a witch. So that's a test that I would like. I would be confident in that one.
So again, it goes back to what I asked you about the buoyancy test.
Yeah.
There's no scriptural evidence to why
No.
that would make any sense. It's just somebody going, there's a dog. If the dog eats this and talks, you're the witch. So there's no spiritual or scriptural evidence that any of that made sense.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like so many things now. Somebody starts some rumor, and no matter how ridiculous the rumor, you'll have people jump right on it if it fits their agenda. And
Yeah,
so church has been for the longest time so political that it's usually about a power grab, and the true message of love gets lost because we're trying to hold on to power. And that's when you see the Pope, for example, um, was used to sit on what was called the throne of Peter.
hmm
He's a now when you read the Gospels about Jesus, you don't see any thrones that Peter's going to sit on,
right.
but the papacy has a throne, the throne of Peter, and then they have all this power and authority. They're the head of the whole church. They're God's representative on earth, and it's all power. And kings would even have to appease the Pope. And the Pope
Yeah,
had their own kind of nation and they had his own army. And see, everything was like everything else. You just slapped a little God paint on it and tried to say it was a godly thing, but they were just using the whole God stuff to do what people tend to do on this planet, and that's try to rule and oppress others for their own benefit. And so
yeah,
these witch trials seem to be one, paranoia, political in nature when it comes to certain women, and just evil. It's just evil, and the whole time the churches really had incorporated some of the so-called occult practices, yet would still burn people alive, and that happened more in Europe, the burning alive, but more in Salem, which trials it was hanging was primarily what they would do. And the Salem witch trials, from what I saw, is just it only lasted a short time period. That's
yeah,
what's shocking. Maybe from 1692, 1693, I think. And it just, the allure of it, like you said, even today people still go there expecting supernatural occurrences, and and so this is how the church always gets this um bad press, because you have people out there like the Harry Potter tattoo that make us look like idiots.
Yeah.
Like you love a woman and you were gonna go, oh, you got that Harry Potter tattoo. We can't be together.
Well, well, for starters, they should have known better than to ask me, because no
Yeah,
matter what it is you tell me to do or not to do, if you tell me to do it or not to do it, I'm going to do the opposite. So they're fucked up that way anyway.
yeah.
But okay, so I don't even know if you would know the answer to this question. And to be honest, I didn't even think about it until right this moment as we're sitting here having this discussion. Granted, at the time, America wasn't anything more than a bunch of colonies,
Hmm.
but was there any legal issues tied to this, because these people are actively murdering people?
Yeah,
And again, it was colonies back then, so I don't know how
yeah.
structured the government was, but are you aware of any like legal problems? Did anyone ever say, hey, you're killing people, that's still against the law? Or is that something that just has never crossed your radar?
Not that I have seen or ever heard that the church had so much authority, um that
You could just
even,
slap God on it and it was good.
yeah, and you had people who were in government who are all about, supposedly we're all Christians kind of thing. And so if
Yeah.
your Christian leaders are talking to you about witchcraft and this kind of stuff, and he just utilized it for continued power. And
Yeah.
it's sad because we're talking about human beings, and even if somebody practices witchcraft, what why would you kill them? You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
where are we getting this stuff from? And all of the criteria for it all, that was just ridiculous. It makes no sense. And so even Halloween this time of year, when I first started following Jesus, um, that's when I started hearing about Halloween and the demonic and all that stuff. I grew up in church and stuff, and we trick or treated. It wasn't a thing. And so then I got to church in the 90s, and man, it was just hysteria about everything was a demon, everything was evil, everything had to be avoided. And I always thought it just seemed odd. Then we would have a little festival that was pretty much Halloween without the bad costumes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But see, that's how it began. And what Halloween was a Celtic thing, and it wasn't Halloween, it was just a celebration. Sowen is what it was called, Sowen. And it was a celebration of the end of summer and the end of the harvest. And they believe it was a thin veil at this time between the living and the dead, and they
Mm,
were concerned about evil spirits infiltrating, and so they would wear costumes, go into the streets screaming, trying to scare the evil spirits away. And I thought that was interesting because we made Halloween so evil, and the whole time is rooted in something that was that was trying to get rid of the evil spirits.
yeah. It's
And
supposed to be
so,
opposite, right? Yeah.
exactly. But then
Yeah.
the church starts to adopt some of this stuff, because it's like Christians that are running over and enjoying some of this stuff, which, you know, I would think would be a good thing. That you know, that they would, just like you and I. It was like, if I was this uptight religious, traditional preacher dude, we wouldn't be doing this right now.
Right.
And so the fact that I say shit, and that you can wear whatever insane clown posse whatever t-shirt, I never really paid attention. That's you. That's your flow. But yeah, they would start getting involved in some of these things, and then the church would try to come up with an alternative to things. And so the Catholic
Yeah.
Church had a all Saints Day, where they had a feast and they were celebrating those who were dead, who were faithful Christians. And then it turned into how All Hallow Day, and eventually Halloween. And the origins of it, the church was wrapped up in the whole thing.
Right.
So that's why I was like, I don't know. to me, uh, evil is about your intentions. And
Right.
so for me to see a little kid dressed in a devil's costume and think I got to save this kid when this kid's not thinking about anything evil. The parents that dressed him up that way 9 times out of 10, it's just the costume for the kid.
Yeah.
It has turned into something where it's going to be whatever it is you're making it. And if you're going to make it about something dark and make it about something that harms other people and all of that, that's my issue. I don't care whether you call it Halloween, Christmas, 4th of July, whatever it is. It's about what's going on in my own heart when I do this. And that's why I abandoned all that, once we started the whole you can't trick or treat, you can't do this. Because I was like, you know what, I'm not thinking, I had never in all my childhood been thinking about something evil and demonic. I'm thinking about getting this candy, is what I was thinking about. I
Yeah.
gonna get this candy tonight. And but
Right.
we turn it's almost like the church makes something evil that you didn't even think was evil. Now you think it's evil because they said so.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. And so
Yeah.
they start adopting these things even with Christmas, which is fascinating. This always fascinated me that Jesus wasn't born on the 25th of December.
Right.
We all know that. And so it wasn't until the 4th century that we even had something called Christmas we celebrate on the 25th of December. And it was around that time, I think more in the November time frame, that the Romans would celebrate the birth of a sun god called Invictus. And they would have feasts and family and gifts and all this kind of stuff. And we were running over there because that's fun. Give each other gifts, and they would run over there. And so these church leaders get together and decide we're gonna make December 25th Jesus's birthday, and we're gonna have a tree, and we're gonna and all of the pagan stuff that's in Christmas. If we really want to go that route, the Christmas tree is a pagan thing, wreaths are pagan thing. None of this stuff is associated with Jesus and Christianity. So when I started pastoring a church, I had to decide: are you gonna be the radical jerk guy that starts pointing out all of the pagan stuff in Christmas, so we're not going to put a Christmas tree in the sanctuary and all that kind of stuff? Or am I going to go with the heart and go, now I've been celebrating Christmas my whole life. There's no evil intent here. This
Right.
just, and we know Jesus wasn't born on Christmas Day, but if we want to go that route and just celebrate it as that day, that's fine. Our problem is, I think we still do witch trials if we could, because of the angry Christians every Christmas. It's a war on Christmas. It's a war on Christmas. They won't let us put out our little white Jesus babies in the nativity scene with the three wise men who probably wasn't three. Not the scripture never said it was three of them, and they were astrologers. So
Right.
I don't know what we do with that, but we still function that way. Or go to Walmart and you got this poor person, just this poor clerk, 16-year-old girl trying to help you out, and you say Merry Christmas, she says Happy Holiday, and now you chewing on her ass about it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
that's what it is. We make these things, whatever we want to make, good or evil or important or unimportant. And that's why I have nothing to do with church for like a decade after I was turned 18, because I just thought it was nonsense. I still think a lot of church stuff is nonsense, but I think Jesus is real, and that's
Yeah.
who I follow. But yeah, Christmas has got pagan roots. Um, and Halloween is wrapped up with the church. All Souls Day, All Saints Day, um, commemorating the dead and all that stuff is all wrapped up together. We just polished it up a little, put a little God stuff on it, and act like what we're doing is holy and what you do is evil. And
Yeah.
so every year people they'll be praying because they're gonna somebody gonna sacrifice babies and all this is Halloween. And then you go, if anybody's sacrificing babies, it ain't because of Halloween. It's because they're a murderer, I guess. I mean, I don't know what if the majority of people are at a party.
Yeah. The only thing that I've ever seen, and it's notorious, the only thing I've ever seen that Halloween causes chaos has been what they know up in Detroit as Devil's Night, where
Okay.
basically the day before Halloween, the night before Halloween, there's always been chaos. Like
Yeah.
people do crimes and all that stuff. That's a notorious Detroit city situation. Eminem
Yeah.
and D12 rapped about it. They actually named the first national release Devil's Night. That
Okay.
was the D12 album Devil's Night. That was a reference to October 30th, the night of October 30th, where Detroit kind of gets a little bit crazy. Other than
Okay.
that, I don't know any other place on earth that is suddenly bad because of Halloween. But when you really start thinking about it, it's not really that big as a surprise that people latch on to some of these things
Yeah.
because in the course, and it's not just an American thing. We're Americans. We're talking about America here, but in the history of America, people have always latched on to things that seem insane in the name of religion.
Yeah.
Hence, you have literal cults like Heaven's Gate and the Jim Jones cult and cults like that have taken place in this country, and a
Yep.
lot of that is because people need to feel like they're a part of something. Now that's
Yeah.
my personal opinion. I
Yeah.
think people latch onto these things because it gives them a sense of belonging that they didn't
Yeah.
have before. And I'm not saying like this is some kind of magical idea coming out of my head. That's very
Hmm.
obvious, but I just think
Right.
that's the main root to why some of these people latch on to some of that stuff. And that's
Yeah.
something else I wanted to talk to you about because, again, with you being on the other side of that, you have a certain perspective on some of these things because I hear shit like that. I hear
Yeah.
shit like Jim Jones and Heaven's Gate.
Hmm.
Heaven's Gate, I kind of laugh at because
Yeah.
of the things that that dude was able to convince his follower to do were quite comical. But
It's
when I think about
mind-boggling.
Jim, it's very mind-boggling. But when I think about Jim Jones, I feel partially sad and also angry because I've heard the infamous tapes of the day where they all killed each other,
Yeah.
and you hear children crying hysterically while
Yeah.
these grown ass adults
Yeah.
willingly ingest poison. I know it's not Kool Aid. And that's another thing about the whole Jim Jones thing. It
Yeah.
was not Kool Aid. It was the off brand, but people just say Kool Aid because it was
Right.
easy. I don't know
Like
why I had
it's
to point that out.
it's part of the American lexicon now.
All
Drinking the
right, yeah,
Kool-Aid. Yeah.
it's forever Kool Aid now, but it was not Kool Aid that they used. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, that's neither here or there. But yeah, I hear the everything. Even right now, as I'm sitting here talking to you about it, I hear the audio recording of these fucking grown adults
Yeah.
excited to die for this dude and kill their entire families for this dude,
Yeah.
all in the name of religion and wanting to be a part of something. So
Yeah.
I wanted to at least touch on that with you because I wanted to get your insight and see if you had any history on it. Because I just, yeah, it's an interesting thing.
Oh yes, that's my thing because I watch a lot of documentaries and stuff about cults because I'm fascinated with how did you get to the place that this person can pretty much say or do anything and you just walk in line like that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you hit the nail on the head in the beginning. It's about belonging. That's why we all want to belong to something, and we have a common interest, and you hang out together, and biker gangs, and they have a common interest, and so it's normal. But then these cult leaders will seek out people with low self-esteem, low self-worth, maybe in poverty, maybe they're homeless, maybe or whatever they can find that they can read in you that you have this desperate need to be accepted. And so it starts that way, and it seems like a Jim Jones. When he started off, he was preaching. He was a great preacher. It all seemed legit in the beginning. So you can see how people would start to get hooked in because it just seemed like church. But then it's always little signs that the cult leader would do. They always end up actually God himself. They'll end up,
Mm.
or the only one who can actually hear God or represent God. And it's a slow burn type thing because it starts out pretty normal, and then they just take it to the next level. To
Yeah.
and I think it comes to the place where it's difficult to accept. You get to a certain place that you've given your own wife to this cult leader dude to have sex with your own wife, maybe even your own daughter, and said that that's how you encounter God and all those kinds of things. And they so far into it, it's like they don't want to accept that they got duped like that. And
Right.
so they'll just keep going. And so with Jim Jones, once I think there's a scene in a movie about him. I don't know if it happened or not, but he was preaching, and he takes the Bible and he throws it on the floor, and he says, "If you need something, you're not coming to Jesus. Who you coming to? Jim Jones." And I was like, "There it is. That's when you should have
Hmm.
been. If not before, you definitely should have been gone then, because now he's doing what these cult leaders tend to do, which is boom. Hey, I'm actually God Himself, and if you give me your daughters, give me your sons, give me your wives, them being with me, they're encountering God."
Yeah.
And all of these cults, they start even with Hitler. It started out just a political party, and he'd start once he gains more power. Then it requires more and more allegiance, and to get to the place that whatever he says is truth.
Yeah.
And with Jim Jones, it's just one of the extraordinary stories because it was to move these people to Ghana somewhere in the jungle. He wearing sunglasses all the time. Some people already know he's a drug addict at this point. I don't get it. And that's why I study that stuff, because I go, how did you get to the place? And that's what I've been able to pick up. It starts with connection. They feel loved, they feel accepted, they feel like it's all good. But there's more and more that needs to be done. And then you get to that place where you start, if you ever started seeing me like I'm your source, I'm just this dude who had an encounter with the source, and I'm trying to help other people in their relationship with God. In fact, it aggravates me if you need me too much. After a while, I'm like, you got to transfer that to Him. I
Hmm.
don't you ask, should I take this job? Should I this? Should I that? And it's like every move you make, and I'm not. That's not what I'm in this to do. That's not what we're supposed to do. But the Jim Jones of the world, man, they all got the same. It's the same pattern. All of
Yeah.
them, even Heaven Gates, dude. It's this feeling like you're a part of something, and they always talking about the end of the world. All of them would be talking about the end of the world, and you're the only group that's gonna make it. And
Right.
so you feel special because you're only group the government's bag, get a bunch of guns. It goes on and on. And the moment happens when you start looking at this human being like they're your source of joy and happiness and provision, and you've made a god out of them, and they just
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah.
so,
And this
yeah,
this this is neither here or there as far as like the on topic, but it's what you're talking about as far as like just accepting stuff.
yeah,
I'm kind of fascinated with Mormonism,
okay,
and the fact that if you really look at the origins of Mormonism, most people would think this Smith dude
yeah,
made all that shit up.
right,
Like, no, with the golden plates and the hat.
yeah,
And the reason why I became kind of interested in learning about Mormonism is because I worked with a Mormon once, and that she was telling me what she believed, and I guess she was saying like only a certain amount of people are going to get into heaven. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why y'all recruiting then? And she just kind of stopped and looked at me. And she goes, I don't know. That's just how I was raised. So that's what I think.
There you go.
And I'm
Yep.
like, but but you didn't answer the question. and
Exactly. Because that
there's a
makes
lack.
sense.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And it goes back to the same way that you were kind of alluding to when it comes to Catholicism. And we're not
Yeah.
here to bash on religion. These are just examples.
No, I got you.
It's, Catholicism, all you needed to start a crusade was the Pope's
Yeah.
blessing.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
You know? And it's funny, when you said the throne of Peter, sidebar here, uh, if you've never seen the Easter episode of South Park, South Park told this whole story of how the throne of Peter was really for a rabbit because Jesus knew he couldn't trust a man with his church, so he had to leave it with a rabbit. And that's where we get Peter Cottontail from. And it's they actually the movie The Da Vinci Code,
Yeah.
it's a copy of the Da Vinci Code, but instead of the Virgin Mary not being real, it was really the church. The Pope was supposed to be a rabbit, and that's like the whole big secret or whatever. Anyway, when you said
That's a
throne of
great
Peter, that just
point,
reminded me
though.
of that.
That's a great
It's a
point.
great episode. If you whoever's watched this, if you've never seen it, it's one of the funniest episodes I've ever seen in my life because there's this whole big cult, and that's why Easter is centered around a bunny, and like just the way that they connected all that shit is
Yeah.
hilarious to me. However, I say all that to say this. That's how easy it is to connect dots out of random things in the air,
Yeah.
put it into a piece. You granted South Park is a comedy, but put
Yeah.
it all together in a piece and goes, doesn't this make sense?
Yeah. And if
And
enough
for
people believe it, everybody
and,
latches
and
on.
enough people believe it, and
Yep.
enough people exactly. Yep. So
It's
that goes back
crazy.
to the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah.
My parents, they're missionary Baptist is their denomination. I grew up in that and everything. And once I was an adult, I was done. Else because I didn't know it then, but I just didn't. I couldn't deal with boxes or deal with just because somebody said. You know what I mean? It just seemed odd that okay, I would ask questions and then they would kind of shut me down. And I would think even as a little kid that seemed like a logical question, but they
Yeah.
but wouldn't have an answer or and just tell me don't question God and so I've never been that guy that just cause whoever said that's the end of it. He said it.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's how those cults are, man. David Koresh would keep them up for hours on end with his interpretation of what the Bible said. And
Real quick. Go
yeah,
ahead and give us a rundown of David Koresh for somebody who will be watching right now and wouldn't know who he is.
yeah. And the name of the group he was part of escapes me because his name isn't actually David Koresh. He was renamed that. And
Mm,
it was a power struggle between him and this woman, I believe, that was going to take over. He ends up taking over, um, his whole shtick was he would just like you said, South Park. He would break down the scriptures so creatively that everybody was in awe. Then it got to the place only David knew what the scriptures said, and then the next level always comes. David Koresh is Jesus in the flesh once again, and now the government's coming, and it's the last days, and we need to get guns, and so on and so forth. And that's how it all began. Um, is once again a guy that people started to look at as though this person himself is everything. And
Branch Davidians is
yes,
I'm
yeah.
butchering that last word, but
Branch,
that's the name of the
Branch
cult. Yeah.
Davidians, yeah. And I mean, this dude, if this dude gets to a place where he commands husbands that they can't have sex with their wives, and he would take their wives and have sex with them. You can't make that up. And they
Right.
were they were good with it. And yeah, And it's because stuff like we're talking about, we don't really do any research about anything. And we're in the day and age now, it's no excuse. You just Google something and you get a lot of info. And
Yeah.
so as for me as a Christian, Halloween is here or there for me. It was like, I really don't care. It's not a problem. It doesn't freak me out in any way. I
Yeah.
know people that I know are great people, um, and they love Halloween. It's their favorite time of year. And you go, okay.
Mm,
And it's all because we like to label things we don't understand.
right. And not only that, people want to say, oh, you got to choose your entertainment better. Well, one of the
Hmm.
most gory, bro, the Passion of the Christ should be in the horror film section. Like
Yeah,
that ending scene it was fucking brutal. And it's just funny it goes back to the Santa Claus thing. If it's a certain category, it's fine. If it's one category, is
right.
another. But that's the kind of double standards that gets us into the situations like we're talking about and have been talking about for the last 15 minutes is the fact
Yeah,
that people are comfortable as long as it's their brand of terror, I guess would be
yeah,
the
yeah. I like that.
way to
But
put it.
yeah, long as it's our
Yeah,
brand. But yeah,
right.
you're absolutely right. I've watched Passion of the Christ one time. Period. I've never done it again. It just,
Mm,
I mean, I know what happened to Jesus was horrific, but it just kind of, I just couldn't deal with it. And
yeah,
so we all got our list that says these are the good Christian things, and that's evil. So I
yeah,
mean, it'd be people that would never go to my church because I said shit, just because I
right.
said that word, which is just
Yeah,
ridiculous. Because it's just a word. It's all about what was behind what I say.
yeah.
You know.
And not only that, those kind of people would be the same ones that go, he just cussed. Can you believe that shit? Like, you know what I'm saying? that's
Exactly.
that's that's the hypocrisy that always bothers me. And I
Yeah.
mean, it is what it is. But well, as we wrap up here, um, I really enjoyed this because it's one of those things that's always fascinates me, but I don't really have a chance to talk with too many people that know the in depths with it. And like I said, I wanted to have you on because I knew you would have insight in it that a lot of people wouldn't. So, thank you for being open and honest. I'm sure anybody who watches will definitely appreciate that. And you're one of my favorite human beings on earth, and I think you know
Man,
that.
that
So,
that means a lot to me, man. That means a lot to me, and thank you for having me. And anybody watching, man, you need to follow, like the Row Show, man. It's the shit.
yes. Oh shit, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I always at the end of each episode give the last couple of minutes to my guests. If there's anything particular you want to plug where people can follow you, for those who don't know, John is very active on social media. And not only that, I do want to point this out because there's going to be people that go on there and they're going to scroll through and they're going to start immediately wanting to type. Listen, my dude John here is one of the few people on earth that if you don't agree with something he's got to say, he loves you regardless. And I wouldn't say something like that unless I meant it and knew it to be 100% true. And we need more people like that on this planet who are not going to judge you because your opinion differs from theirs. If we really want to talk about diversity and all that kind of stuff, diversity means diverse. That means different. You don't go to
yeah.
a brainstorm with everyone having the same opinion and get results. And I think that's
Exactly.
the attitude that he has. So before I allow you to plug anything, I want to point that out. This is one of the most open individuals I've ever met in my life. Obviously, have you seen from this episode and the willingness that he has shown everybody to have an open discussion about things that might be uncomfortable. This is the guy for it. So I wanted to point that out because I wanted to make sure I went out of my way. Because look, where I come from in the underground scene, all these posters on here,
Yeah.
we like to pretend. We like to pretend we're some of the most open individuals on the planet. We're not.
Right.
We're some of
Right.
the most closed-minded. So if you were to
Uh,
interact some of those people, I encourage you to go into what he's got to say with an open mind, whether you agree with him or not. With that being said, I'm going to give the last couple of minutes to you. Anything you want to say, plug, socials, whatever you want. Floor is yours, my man.
I would just like to say to anybody that's watching, um, let's love one another. That's the whole message. That's not religion to me. I know Jesus said it, but others have said it. If we love one another, forgive one another, have empathy toward one another, this could be a better world altogether. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, just you can friend request John Scott and Kingdom Life. If you follow us on Facebook, there you can get any messages that I do, any preaching and teaching, and I do that on my own Facebook page too. Uh, I like to use media to educate and to just provoke thought. And so make sure you follow the Row Show, man. I believe in this man. He's one of the most genuine people that I've ever met, and I love his heart, and you should too.
I appreciate the kind words, my friend. Thank you again for being on. It has been fun and a pleasure,
Yeah.
John.
All right, man. I'll talk to you.